Welcome. This is a new podcast intended to shine the light on what our local government bodies are up to. Everything is fair game, following the money, connecting the dots, and more than that, telling the truth. I am your host, Adam Chudzik. My family has been in Norridge since the 1960s. I am a third-generation Norridge resident, and I have been a local government watchdog for over 5 years. I recorded many of the public meetings you see in the Norridge Integrity YouTube channel. I was also a write-in candidate in 2019 for Norridge Village Trustee. I will provide facts and fact-based opinions in an ongoing in-depth conversation, and I tell it like it is. So if you're looking for quick social media sound bites or a safe space, this is not going to be the place for you. If you want to know what is really going on in Norridge politics, then keep listening. In the past few months, we have seen some major changes to our elected officials representing Norridge. Of course, I use the word represent loosely, since politicians seem to represent themselves more than those who elected them. We have one senator and 2 House seats in Springfield. Illinois Senator John Mulrow resigned to take a judgeship. Illinois House Representative Robert Martwick resigned his seat in order to be appointed to fill Mulrow's vacant seat. The other Illinois House Representative Michael McCullough resigned his seat abruptly. John Mulrow was no friend to the people of Norridge. He rubber-stamped every single tax increase at every level put before him, and has done nothing to fix crippling property taxes. Robert Martwick also rubber-stamped every tax increase put in front of him. Other people have criticized Martwick as Silver Spoon Rob and his general privileged upbringing, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. But my main concern is his conflict of interests. What I mean by that is, Martwick is a member of a law firm which handles property tax appeals, and he should not be an Illinois representative or Illinois senator or any government position that sets property tax rates or policies. To vote on property tax legislation while personally profiting off of high property taxes, that's a total conflict of interest. Martwick's loyalties are to Chicago's 38th Ward, and Chicago Democratic operatives of the Chicago 38th Ward have close ties to newly elected Norridge Village trustees Bill Larson and Jack Bialik. Michael McCullough, better than those other two, not very inspiring. On social issues, he was left-wing, although to his credit he did vote against some tax increases. Why did he resign so suddenly? Maybe because he no longer had former Governor Bruce Rauner's money propping him up. McCullough was caught in something of a conflict of interest scandal back in 2017 when it was made known that his wife Kim, who owns a PR firm, billed the Illinois Tollway millions of dollars in contracts. McCullough's replacement is Mayor Bradley Stevens of Rosemont. I would do some research on the Stevens family and decide whether you want one of those people representing us. Start with his father, Donald Stevens, who was mayor of Rosemont for 51 years and died while serving his 13th consecutive term. Bradley Stevens, in 2017, gave himself a $90,000 raise, and his regime has levels of nepotism that would make politicians of the Norridge Improvement Party blush. 10 members of the Stevens family are or have worked for the Rosemont municipal government. At one point, Bradley Stevens was mayor, his brother Donald II was police chief, his nephew Donald III was deputy police chief, and Christian Stevens, a grandson of the original Donald Stevens I, was the manager of the convention center. Apparently, Mr. Stevens will not be resigning his $260,000 job as mayor. He says he's going to do both jobs. Adding his new $69,000 state salary gives him a taxpayer-funded public salary of $329,000. And if he stays in the Illinois House long enough, he will be eligible for a state pension. Last time I looked, the median family income for Norridge was about $64,000. I think we can do a lot better than elect a member of the Stevens nepotism family. This seat, like all House seats, are up for election every other November, and we'll be able to actually vote on somebody better next year. A related piece of info there, Howard Heights Mayor Arlene Jazerny followed Stevens' lead and also doubled her salary a few years back. Why? She said she deserved it. And as her party controls all the seats on the Harwood Heights board, there was no opposition to stop her. Sound familiar? At the local level, we saw the demise of 2 awful autocratic regimes in Norridge. The first was at District 80, where 8-year board president Server Radisevich did not run for re-election. He was replaced as board president by newcomer Sam Palazzo. The second regime to fall this year was the Norridge Improvement Party municipal administration of James Shimura. Shimura gave only a week public notice of his resignation. Named interim mayor was current trustee Daniel Tannhauser. At District 80, not only did Radisevich step down, but Vice President Pasquale Biondo, whose term does not expire until 2021, was stripped of his leadership position, being succeeded as vice president by another newcomer, Frank Trabuzio. District 80 Superintendent Paul O'Malley resigned, having taken a new superintendent job in Oak Brook. Named interim superintendent is current assistant superintendent Stephanie Palmer. When she was hired as Giles principal and assistant superintendent, Palmer was not hired in the normal competitive bid process. There were no job postings or any other job applicants, according to records obtained via Freedom of Information. Palmer was not well liked by at least some of the members of the District 80 board majority. There was discussion about sharing a superintendent with District 234, and their superintendent was amenable to the idea, but the 234 board did not want to move forward. The deadline of July 1st to have a new superintendent on record, as well as a desire to retain some amount of leadership continuity after the departure of O'Malley, no doubt also worked in Palmer's favor. District 80 in the past decade has endured one crisis after another. The biggest issue facing the district is the fiscal irresponsibility of its Board of Education. At the start of the decade, the district had nearly $10 million reserve in the bank. That's when it started spending more than it was receiving in tax revenue. 2011 saw the installation of a new board president who publicly proclaimed a desire for change. But instead of arresting deficit spending, the board under his leadership just dug the hole deeper. $10 million is a lot of money, and is much more than the recommended reserve of 25 to 50% of the district's yearly expenses. But in the board's rush to give away everything, including the kitchen sink, maintenance of the school buildings was given a low priority. That $10 million reserve was drained not for building expenses, but for yearly operational revenue, creating new programs and saddling the district with a 5-year teacher contract that it could never afford. But that was no problem for the leadership of Radicevich, Biondo, and Paul O'Malley. Let's just ask already overtaxed voters for a 73% increase in the District 80 tax levy to make up for it. When they tried this, voters decisively rejected this $60 million property tax increase in 2016, with 77% of the electorate against. They tried again a few months later by a smaller amount, and that one was defeated by 80% of the electorate. The vote totals show District 80's Board of Education lacked credibility with voters, including parents with children in the district. To this day, they have still not regained the trust of the community. For now, I'm going to refrain from commenting on the new board's effectiveness in all but one area, transparency. Unfortunately, the new board has not lived up to its promises of greater transparency. There have been countless special meetings that were almost all closed sessions. Despite us being promised the candidates would be the most transparent board, they have been anything but. As per the Open Meetings Act, you can only discuss specific things in a closed meeting, and I question whether these seemingly excessive use of closed sessions are consistent with the law. The candidates also said the district would live stream the board meetings. Not a single board meeting has been recorded by the district. There was one meeting recording that was posted on the district's Facebook page, but it was actually recorded by a third party and not by employees of the district. District 80 pays their IT guy a great deal of money, and his contract was just renewed. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask him to record at least one of the board meetings a month. District 80 has traditionally had poor compliance with the two main laws governing transparency in Illinois, the aforementioned Open Meetings Act and the Freedom of Information Act. In 2016, then Board President Radicevich told me I could not record a board meeting when I asked him where should I place my camera. At the time, the district had a rule that said you could not record meetings without giving them a 24-hour written notice. I challenged their rule in a complaint filed with the Illinois Attorney General's office. The Attorney General put the smack down on District 80, saying that I, or anybody else, have the right to record, and District 80's 24-hour rule was vacated. Because the ruling was binding and it was not challenged, it affects all public bodies throughout Illinois. According to documents retrieved from Freedom of Information, District 80 spent $4,000 defending their position. If District 80 can blow that kind of money on lawyers defending something that should never have happened in the first place, then surely they can spend far less than that on proper recording equipment. I recorded District 80 meetings for 2.5 years. If I can do that while spending less than $500, so can District 80. District 207 in Park Ridge records all their meetings and posts them on their YouTube channel. District 80 could be the first public body in Norridge to officially record its own meetings. If you're serious about transparency, then seize this opportunity. Transparency is good for all of us. As for James Shimura and the Village of Norridge government, I have been a close observer of village politics for Shimura's entire 6-year tenure, and I have recorded many of his public meetings. Like McCullough, Shimura abruptly resigned, only giving a few days public notice. It's interesting to note that McCullough was Shimura's ally, and Shimura propped up McCullough against a Madigan Stooge candidate a few years back, named Mary Marwig. McCullough returned the favor by endorsing Shimura in his 2017 re-election for mayor. I always try to look for the good to outweigh the bad. Try as I might to look for positive outcomes of the Shimura administration, I can't think of any. In his 6 years, he more than doubled the village property tax levy. Not only that, but sales taxes are up. New taxes were imposed. Wasteful spending is up. Nepotism is up. And crime is up. As such, I consider Shimura's regime to be a complete failure. Shimura's replacement is Daniel Tannhauser, who has been a member of the Norridge Improvement Party for some years, a trustee since 2013, and he owns a construction company called Tanco. Tannhauser's public record is relatively uneventful. Although early in his first trustee term, he made a positive contribution by pushing reform of the permitting system, in which many arguably frivolous permits were eliminated. At the time, Tannhauser seemed to be the only person taking point in rolling back a local government that has now grown so big, they are trying to justify spending tens of millions of dollars on a new village compound. The other trustees, in my experience, pretty much just phoned it in, with a few exceptions. Since then, though, Tannhauser has pretty much just rubber-stamped whatever was put in front of him. I hope that the demise of these two regimes will usher in improvements to District 80 and the Village of Norridge municipal government. At District 80, there has been nearly a sweeping regime change. All of the leadership has turned over except for Palmer. In my opinion, the biggest challenge District 80 faces is the successful negotiation of a new teacher contract. To that end, I strongly urge the board to insist on a pay freeze for at least 2 years and a contract length of no more than 3 years. The Serber Radisevich 5-year contract was a disaster. Don't repeat it. I also ask that the District 80 board post the final draft of the teacher contract at least 2 weeks prior to its final passage, giving the community an opportunity to review it. After all, it is our money that will be paying for this contract. If you're looking for precedent posting a draft labor contract prior to its passage, Park Ridge District 64 does the same. For reasons of transparency, all public bodies should post a copy of the labor contract before passage. As for the Village of Norridge, I offered my congratulations to Tannhauser when he was sworn in, but maybe I should have offered condolences instead. He has his work cut out for him, cleaning up the mess Shimura left. That is, if he wants to clean up the mess, or recognizes there is a mess. On the surface, there is a new mayor, but he is of the same political machine party as Shimura. Only time will tell if there are any meaningful changes. So far, I am seeing two faces of Tannhauser. Publicly, he has been saying that Shimura was a good mayor, but I hear he's telling people privately one-on-one that he didn't approve of how Shimura ran the village. He is going to have to decide which it is. You can't have it both ways. You can't tell Shimura supporters that it's business as usual while trying to make nice with the many enemies Shimura has made. Tannhauser has also appeared in several photos with Chicago 38th Ward Democratic operatives, including Frank Avino, who is a fire trustee, and David Feller, the president of the Chicago 38th Ward Democratic Organization. In Tannhauser's first campaign for trustee, he was endorsed by Robert Martwick Sr., current Illinois Senator Robert Martwick's father. These associations tend to make it difficult to determine where the Chicago 38th Ward ends and the Norridge Improvement Party begins. That assumes, of course, there is even a meaningful distinction between the two at this point. My advice for Daniel Tannhauser is to hang out more with people who are loyal to Norridge, especially in independent and free Norridge, and less with people loyal to Chicago like Feller, Martwick, Avino, and Dominic Longo. There is nothing and nobody we need from the 38th Ward or any other ward of Chicago. Now Tannhauser is in charge, though, he can prove his loyalties to Norridge. There's no excuse for continuing Shimura's policies. Reform-wise, I think Mayor Tannhauser needs to start seriously looking at village spending. The priority should be on essential village services, not the patronage jobs program for his Norridge Improvement Party. He should also swiftly abandon any plans to spend $15 million or more on a new village palace consisting of a village hall, police station, senior center, and more. After which point, he should start rolling back the Shimura tax increases. This is not Chicago, and we do not need to tolerate Chicago-style taxing and spending. Last but not least, I want to thank all of you who came out in April to write me in for Norridge Village Trustee. Unlike some candidates, I don't intend on disappearing for the next 4 years. I'm Adam Chudzik, and until next time.